Their journey began in Yasharel, but they were scattered across the face of the earth, each one with its own beat, and each one with its own rhythm. As the dry bones are being revived, the beat begins again at the heart of the tribe.
Hello, hello. All right, there I am. Well, hello, hello. Welcome to Heart of the Tribe. My name is Chelle Wagner. So glad you could come to join me. I am recording this on Purim. It is March the 3rd, 2026, and our world has taken a very interesting turn. I have a lot of things on my heart and a lot of things I want to share, and I will do my best to kind of get it out there and make some sense. So I want to add this to my recording here so you can see. And let me see the best way to do this. All right. So I'm talking about Queen Esther here, and we're looking at her story, which is what Purim is centered in. So I've got here, she was a trauma survivor by design, and what it's like to live with a gift of desperation. So I had seen a very interesting article. It was actually a year ago that I saw it, maybe even two, but it was from Inherit Magazine, 5 Things About Esther That Nobody Talks About, okay, by Rachel Friedlander. She said that the girls that were taken in, so in this story, the king gets disgusted with his wife because she won't come and appear before men and be paraded in front of them. And so she's banished. So now he needs a new king because he's a new queen because he's lonely. So girls are rounded up, and I believe it was around 1,000 of them. I'm not sure of the number. It was tremendous throughout his kingdom in Babylon. They were approximately 14 years of age. Now, Esther was and her name in Hebrew was Hadassah. She's an orphan being raised by a cousin. His name is Mordecai. She's in exile from being caught up in the Babylonian captivity of all of Yehuda. So she's in exile from her war-torn homeland. So basically, this is what nobody talks about. These girls were raped, this and this is out of her article here. It says this part comes as a shocker to people, even to those who have read the whole Megillah as part of their yearly Purim celebration. But the scriptures are pretty clear about what happened. Absolutely. The virgins, who were likely in their early teens, right? Around 14, 13, 14, right? 15, were escorted to the king, who was said to have been approximately 40 years old of age at the time. They were taken one by one to his sleeping quarters. In the evening, she would go in, and in the morning, she would return to the second harem in custody of Shashgaz, the king's eunuch, who was in charge of the concubines. This is from Esther 2:14. So they had their one night with the king. All this movie's been made about it, but nobody really talks about the traumatizing situation for these girls. I mean, I've been a 14-year-old girl before. I've raised a daughter. I have 4 granddaughters. I know 14-year-olds, 13-year-olds are not instinctively attracted to 40-year-old men. They're not. There's no attraction there, right? So they would most likely have been in their homes, probably had because they are starting to think about marriage, and they are starting to think about their future and their husband and the children they're going to have and the homes they're going to have. All of this is ripped away from them forever. Okay. They have their one night and then they wait. They didn't return to the other virgins, okay, after they had their one night with the king, but instead were added to the number of the king's other concubines, aka his sex slaves, without any wife status whatsoever. No other man could ever be their husband, and they never saw the king again unless he was pleased with them. In short, the king test drove all the models before making his purchase, and he purchased Esther to replace his former queen. So Queen Esther was a trauma survivor. The scriptures are replete with those who have lived through unbelievably difficult times. The tides change and difficult times arrive. The tides have changed again. They have changed for our country, and most people in our country have no idea. But the moment that we went into Iran on behalf of the interlopers who claim to be biblical Israel, but are not, they are not. They are a political construct from 1948. And there is a ton of information out there about how they came to be. This was not the great exodus, the greater exodus of Yah gathering all 12 of his tribes from all the nations where they have been scattered. This has not happened yet, but this is an interloper nation with it's a political ideology. It designed to enslave the rest of humanity. When you look at their Noahide laws and the different things, and I'll see if I can go into that some, because it is horrendous. And we have been so fooled as to, especially, if you bless Israel, you're going to be blessed. They are not biblical Israel. And the churches in America and our government in America is sending our money, our resources, our people right now to die on this hill that has nothing to do with the God of the Bible. This is not his will, his country. In fact, they're interlopers, and his will is that he will kick them out of that land so that it can be made ready for the people who are his, because he will bring his tribes home again. And it is not only a bloodline, there's a bloodline promise, but many of the bloodline promise won't make it because they won't accept Yahushua HaMashiach as their savior. But there's a heartline promise, because there's only one door into the entrance of the kingdom and into the family, which includes the division of the 12 tribes. And that doorway is named Yahushua HaMashiach, who came, who was born of the Virgin Mary, who lived to 33 years of age, who made miraculous healings, who opened through his death, burial, and resurrection, and overcoming all the principalities that were rebellious, made a way, a miraculous way, which is what the mystery of the kingdom is. He made a way for those who had no way, right? He made a way for those who were not of the bloodline. And it was as he fulfilled all the promises that said, Yah could make all these rocks sons and daughters of Abraham. It's an amazing thing. And our religious systems are so confused. We've had so much bad theology, so much bad teaching, and people have no idea who they are. And everything's about to get rocked. And I will talk about that some more in some future videos. For right now, I'm going to go on with this one about the story of Queen Esther and Purim and just what the story is. Okay. I do think that there is, it's an amazing gift. And that's, I guess, my biggest thing in this is concentrating on the amazing gift that Yah can put within even a 14-year-old girl to overcome horrendous circumstances and rise up with so much courage and so much bravery that, is an example to the world forever. And her story is included in the scriptures forever. There were more stories. Joseph, same thing, sold into slavery, had to overcome so much. But then because of his willingness to overcome, made a way for the rest of his brothers. David, hunted by this jealous, mad king, right? Who wanted all the power for himself, made a way, okay, where there would have been no way. Made a way. Abraham and Sarah went through such testing. I really talk about that in my first book called Tribal Roots. Okay. Which there's descriptions if you want to get the book. It's a good book. I mean, it really goes through a lot of historical accounts that we are not given to help us get a more well-rounded idea rather than just accepting what's come down through theology that has been so infected by political ideology and so influenced by a rogue nation with interest of their own that do not include our well-being. In fact, their Noahide law is the very first one about idolatry. If you really are a believer in Yahushua HaMashiach as your savior, then you're considered an idolater and considered that your head should be chopped off. That's what it says, literally, but President Bush accepted it as our moral code, which is just wild. And I've got some things that show that. You know what? I can remove this for a minute. Let's go ahead and just look at that for a second, because I want you to see. I want you to see this. So let me see how I can do that. Stop that one. Share my screen. Let me go to a window. Let me see where it's at. All right. So here it was. President George H.W. Bush signed into public law 102-14 on March 20th, 1991, which originated as House Joint Resolution 104. This joint resolution passed by Congress designated March 26, 1991 as Education Day in honor of Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, leader of the Chabad Lubavitch movement. The resolution explicitly recognized the 7 Noahide laws as the bedrock of society from the dawn of civilization and affirmed that they form a foundational moral and ethical basis for American society. It emphasized that these laws, rooted in the Old Testament, an absolute lie, they come from the Talmud, are essential to preserving civilized order and that their erosion threatens societal stability. Okay, let's get rid of that one. Now, Dr. Pigeon has an article. I'm going to put the link in here about what these laws are. Actually, he breaks it down for us. He calls it the tyranny of the Noahide laws. And so you can look through this yourself, right? He starts at, let's be blunt. I love that, right? This blog is a complete denunciation of the Noahide laws and why, right? Okay. He goes into it and goes one by one what they are. Idolatry is forbidden. To worship Yahushua as the Messiah is blasphemy according to the Talmud and punishable by decapitation. All right. Incestuous and adulterous relations are forbidden. This is not Human beings are not sexual objects, nor is pleasure the ultimate goal of life. The Talmud law permits sexual intercourse between children and adults. All right. This is probably what the Epstein files, that the 300 missing files are all about, and exposing all this. In fact, it's an interesting premise. I'm going to stop sharing this for a moment. It is a very interesting premise at the moment that, hold on. Sorry. It's a very interesting thing. What was I trying to tell you about that? I totally lost my train of thought, which is not unusual these days. It's not. I haven't been making a whole lot of videos because I have some stuff going on, and it all affects, I've got like 3 major things going on, and it affects my neurological system. So it's making life a little more difficult for me, but I'm going to do my best to keep plugging in, and I want to stay plugged in. So anyway, I am going to share one more thing here. Let me see. Underneath this one. That is not it. There it is. Okay. So this is just how they came into being. Okay. This was George Bush. Okay. 41st president of the United States of America, which is very interesting when you listen to the history that Dr. Pigeon is lately teaching on his Radio Free Alaska. And I will put a link into that because he does like a daily update most days. And he's really hitting a lot of things and why we are in this situation that we are in. The history of it is absolutely fascinating, how we got here. And H.W. Bush, who was born with the last name Scherf, he was a German, really not born in the United States. Him and his dad was Prescott Bush, but before that, his name was Scherf. Okay. And they hid all this. They were Germans, and they hid all this from the American public. I mean, it's amazing what happened and how hoodwinked we have all become because of all of this. You know, it's just unbelievable when I remember him. I was totally hoodwinked by what went on at first with the Twin Towers and their fall. I mean, when 9/11 happened, I was all there. You know, it was ingrained in me. America, apple pie, freedom, you know, this is who we are as Americans. And yeah, if somebody's going to come and threaten that, we need to take them down. I mean, I bought into it at first, but then too many inconsistencies were there. And I think that it is well established at this point by anybody who has their eyes open that those towers were not taken down by 2 airplanes. They were exploded from within, 100%. And our own government, along with Israel, has been behind all of this, right? And we have now been drug into something that we are not going to get out of without the destruction of our country. We're never coming back out of this. I don't know how long it takes to play out, but everything that we have known is going to fail. And it is an absolute shame, an absolute shame that is what's happening in our world. I'm sorry that I'm kind of all over the place on this, but there's a lot on my brain with it. I am going to go ahead and try to finish this presentation on Hadassah. So after Hadassah, And I hope that we can see her courage, because what I hope to say with all of this is no matter what situation you find yourself in the coming days, I pray that you will rise up in courage and have the courage that Hadassah and many of our other biblical ancestors have shown. Okay. After Hadassah is chosen to become Queen Esther, her heritage was unknown. It was hidden from the king. Mordecai, who sits at the king's gate, overhears a plot against the king. He relates it to Esther, saving the king's life. Haman, a descendant of Amalek, all right, is then promoted to be second in command. Mordecai will not bow down to him, which incites the rage of Haman. Now, Amalek is some of the tribes that had the Nephilim in them. Okay. So we're dealing with otherworldly, we're dealing with the Nephilim seed line, right? So Mordecai will not bow down to him, which incites the rage of Haman. Haman gets the king to pass a law to annihilate every man, woman, and child of Yehuda, because that's who was left at that point, the tribe of Yehuda, not the Jews. This is a more recent construct, and this is where everybody gets so confused. This is the tribe of Yehuda. I was listening to Dr. Pigeon. He said only about 75,000 came back out of the Babylonian exile from Yehuda, and a lot of others came with them. And this presentation shows that. We've had a lot of incursions into what was known as or believed to be the tribe of Yehuda. It was the tribe of Yehuda, but it has been diluted, and I believe it's been totally taken over at this point by an interloper. and it's not who they proclaim to be at all. Certainly not Yah's chosen people, because they are a murderous bunch. Right? So Mordecai will not bow down to Haman, which incites the rage of him. Haman gets the king to pass a law to annihilate every man, woman, and child of Yehuda. The law is passed on the 13th of Aviv, the first month, the day before Passover. The law is to be enacted on the 13th day of the 12th month, Adar. The edict is sent to all 127 provinces of Babylon. The goal of the king was to establish a larger global community that acted as one in unity. So this is from the Sefer, which has the Apocrypha in it and has the book additions to Esther. So this comes from the third edition, chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. It says, the copy of the Sepharim was this: the great Artakshashta writes these things to the princes and governors that are under him from India unto Kush, in 127 provinces. After that, I became Lord over many nations and had dominion over the whole world, not lifted up with presumption of my authority, but carrying myself always with equity and mildness. I propose to settle my subjects continually in a quiet life. He was promising them peace and safety. This was his peace and safety edict. I mean, does any of this sound familiar? And making my kingdom peaceable and open for passage to the utmost coast, to renew peace, which is desired of all men, right? He's trying to bring the whole world into one unified front, right? Except for those people of Yah, right? Now, when I asked my counselors how this might be brought to pass, Haman, the Amalekite, right? Haman, that excelled in wisdom among us and was approved for his constant goodwill and steadfast fidelity. Oh, he was just so easy to get along with and concerned with everybody else. And he was loyal, right? And had the honor of the second place in the kingdom. All right. This Amalekite had wormed his way into second in command. Declared unto us that in all nations throughout the world there was scattered. All right. They'd already been scattered into all the nations, all 12 tribes, right? he called them a certain malicious people that had a Torah, not a Talmud, not an oral law, right? Not a 613 mitzvot. No, that's not what it was. A Torah, a, a Torah that told us how to live in a way that would bring life more abundantly. Life, health, peace, happiness, and right relationship with our Elohim. Okay? Yahweh. It had a Torah contrary to all the nations, right? I mean, because nobody else wanted to live that way. We want to do what we want to do. We want to have all the gay pride parades that we want. Now, when you look, right, at Tel Aviv, it is the gay pride place of the nation. It's the gay capital of the world, right? I've done shows about this before. It just is. This is what it promotes. And I know it's offensive, and I know people think that it's hate speech, but it's biblical. And a lot of people at this point consider the word of Yah to be hate speech. But he says it's an abomination. Sexual sin breaks the spirit. This is why, I mean, I think like how I was talking about in the beginning, what these girls went through. This culture that promotes all things are good. I mean, it's pedophilia is okay, that it breaks people's minds. It breaks their spirit. It causes dissociative identity disorder. It shatters the soul of many. Now, Hadassah was an exception. She had the blessing of Yah upon her, and she ended up, being underneath the marriage bed with him. Now, and it's different than a concubine relationship, right? And so being in that position probably gave her the strength to handle what was happening in her life, even though it was abhorrent to her. And you'll see that, right? It says, now when I asked my counselors how this might be brought to pass, Haman, that excelled in wisdom upon us and was approved for his constant goodwill and steadfast fidelity, and had the honor of the second place in the kingdom, declared unto us that in all nations throughout the world there was a certain malicious people that had a Torah contrary to all nations, and continually despised the commandments of kings. So as the uniting of our kingdom, honorably intended by us, cannot go forward. He's saying we can't have our worldwide system of agreement to how the world should operate as long as these people exist. We're still there today. We're there right now. Okay? That has not changed. It continues on. All right. Seeing then that we understand that this people alone is continually in opposition to all men, differing in their strange manner of their Torah. They want to honor the Shabbat. They want to honor the feast, right? Oh, and evil affected to our state, working all the mischief that they can that our kingdom may not be firmly established. He's like, these people are in our way. They keep bringing up this king of the universe, right? This Elohim that they worship, this Yahweh that they want to please. And we can't have our way as long as that is going on. Well, who would know that better than somebody from the lineage of the Nephilim, right? Absolutely. Haman. Therefore, we commanded that all they that are signified in writing unto you by Haman, who is ordained over the affairs and is next unto us, shall all with their women and children be utterly destroyed by the sword of their enemies, without all mercy and pity. He's like, don't even take any pity on them. Oh man, There's no pity being shown to the Christians that are in Iran today. There's no pity being shown to the girls' school that was just bombed. There's no pity being shown to anybody who gets in the way of this beast system right now, today, right now. Without mercy and pity, the 14th day of the 12th month of Adar of this present year, that they who of old and now also are malicious may in one day with violence go into Sheol, and so ever hereafter cause our affairs to be well settled and without trouble. The copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, that they should be ready against that day. The post went out, being hastened by the king's commandment, and the decree was given in Shushan the palace. And the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city Shushan was perplexed. I find it interesting that Haman wasn't the king who came up with this idea, right? But Haman was in his ear, placed there strategically by the enemy, and the king is oblivious, right? He's just doing what he's directed to do by the puppet voices that are behind him. Okay? Interesting how this works. So Mordecai, Esther's, Hadassah's uncle, sees the edict and he goes into mourning before Yah, right? We need to be in serious prayer. We need to be in such serious prayer. I don't know if everybody understands that we have entered a day of mourning. We have entered Yaakov's trouble. We are in the time of Yaakov's trouble. The family of Yah is in great peril in this day, and we have got to be in prayer. Yah has a plan for us. Yah always has a plan for us, and the enemy will never be able to take us all out. But without prayer, some may be taken out early. Some may, we partner with Yahusha by our prayers. Our prayers, I love the scriptures, how it talks about our prayers being like that bowls of incense that they usher into the throne room, right? It's so important. Our prayer life is so important. It means so much. It's powerful. It doesn't necessarily feel powerful, right? I don't live in that state to where, it's all goosebumps and hearing something constantly. And my life feels very ordinary most of the time. Like I said earlier, I struggle with 3 pretty major illnesses. Most of my days is spent trying to walk, just trying to walk, and keep my mind on what Yah would have me keep my mind on. I feel very ordinary, but I do not doubt for one moment that Yah has placed me here just like Queen Esther for such a time as this. And only he knows what he's doing in my life. And I can promise you, the hardships he has allowed in my life, the suffering he has allowed in my life has pushed me to a place of digging and desiring him. I just want to know him. I want to know him more every day. I want to partner with him because will rejoice the day that I get to leave this earth suit. Right? And with my loud mouth, it may happen by decapitation earlier than I expect, right? I know that. I want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. It's all I want to hear. So whatever these hardships have become a pathway to shalom, to quietness, to confidence, to relationship that is yada with my Savior. He suffered so much for me. The bride And I know sometimes men have a hard time wrapping their brain around this, but there's no male or female in the kingdom, right? The bride, the people, the body of Yahusha suffers to come into agreement with doing things the way he wants them done. Basically, John said it, more of you, less of me. This is what happens as we partner with him. More and more and more of our self, our selfishness, our wants, our desires, our need for comfort, whatever it is, the more time, the more room we make for him in our soul by partnership, by reading his word, by thinking about him, by praising, by honor, by communication, by prayer, the more and more of his light is within us and is able to shine out in this very dark world and influence more than we realize, no matter how ordinary we feel. I'm sure that it's hard for me to talk about the king who I love so much without it bringing me to tears. But I'm sure that Hadassah didn't realize, I'm sure she felt way so ordinary to be picked and to be given such a heavy mantle. But if you're alive in this day and age and you love him, you've been given a heavy mantle too, no matter how ordinary you feel. Like I said, I feel really ordinary, but I know that I'm doing what I can. And it was, literally, I would have never started this channel without the hardships of the physical struggles that I have, because that started in 2014. Because I've always had the personality of a bulldozer, right? That was my go-to. There was nothing I couldn't overcome by my striving through and pushing through and, whatever. Physical fitness instructor, and just go for it. And it was everything in my personality. And Yah needed to temper that in my life to help me to be of maximum use for him. He's continuing to do it. And I'm at the point now, I have no doubt that he can heal me, might decide to heal me, take me on the greater exodus. I have no doubt. But it's just kind of like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego when they had to face the fiery furnace. And they had to tell the king, listen, our God is well able, our Elohim is well able to deliver us out of this fiery furnace. But whether he does or whether he doesn't, right? That's an honoring place of bowing to the wisdom of Yah. Whether he does or whether he doesn't, I'm not bowing down to you. That's what they said, right? And that's the position I'm at. I'm going to do whatever I can do until Yah either heals me and tells me to do something else. He may have me lead up a whole bunch of people through the wilderness, he's put that in my heart. He may have Robert and I on the trails. I don't know. He, like I said, he can heal me in an instant. But whether he does or whether he doesn't, I'm his. It doesn't matter to me. The end of it all is I will leave this flesh suit behind and I will be in his presence forever. To be absent from the body is to be present with Yahweh. That's what scripture promises. It's in Proverbs, I believe. So anyway, I'm not going to worry about that. Let me get back to where I was, my side. So I was talking about the mourning, right? Mordecai can see the writing on the wall. All of Yah's people are about to get wiped out. The Yahudim in all the provinces go into fasting and mourning because there's leaders in every province. this is the same it is today, right? They were scattered into the nations then in 127 provinces, and we are scattered into the nations now. And there are good and faithful people everywhere. Sometimes it can feel like a very lonely walk, but I promise you, his people, we're everywhere. We are everywhere. Some of them have been totally hidden and they're going to rise up and shine. Some of them are little children that none of them have a junior Holy Spirit. None of them have a junior Ruach Hakodesh, right? And it's amazing sometimes what comes out of the mouths of babes and children. Um, Absolutely amazing. And they catch things. I mean, don't neglect talking to the children. They are our future still. And I've had the blessing of being in children's ministry a lot, and they are a blessing. Keep speaking to the children. All right. So Esther hears what has happened from, I'm going to put this bigger on the screen so I can see it again. Okay. Let me see if I can switch my display. Oh, okay. That totally wasn't quite what I was going for. Let's try that. Okay. So Esther hears what's happened from her chambermaids. They come and tell her what's going on. Esther informs Mordecai that his request for her intervention could be her death, right? Because Mordecai gets a message to her and says, listen, you have got to go before the king, right? So here it is. And she's like, if I go before him and he decides not to extend his scepter in my direction, off with my head. And a new king will be a new queen will replace me just as easily as I replaced Vashti, So she informs him of that. Now, here is what's written in the additions to Esther in the at Sefer, chapter 7, verses 13 and 14. Then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not with yourself that you shall escape in the king's house more than all the other Yahudim. For if you altogether hold your peace at this time, like if you don't speak up, then shall perish. You're going to perish too. Enlargement and deliverance arises to the Yahudim from another place. He's like, Yah won't fail. You may decide to fail, but Yah's not going to. You and your father's house shall be destroyed. And who knows whether you are come to the kingdom for such a time as this. One of my very favorite statements of scripture. It's in the book of Esther that's in the 66 book version, and it's in this additions to Esther also. Okay. So Esther takes this message very seriously. She calls for a 3-day fast before she goes before the king. She's come to the conclusion, if I perish, I perish. During the fast, Yahweh gives her a strategy. This is the benefit of prayer and fasting and going before him, because he sees and he will give strategy. There may be many, many, many circumstances coming our way. We're going to need the strategy of the king, right? So don't be afraid to go into that deep prayer asking for strategy. Don't give up. Go to him and ask sincerely for strategy, okay, for whatever your situation is. So here's Hadassah, additions to Esther, chapter 7, verses 18 through 25. It says, then Mordecai thought upon all the works of Yahweh and made his prayer unto him, saying, O Yahweh, Yahweh, the King El Shaddai, for the whole world is in your power. And if you have appointed to save Yasharel, there is no man that can gainsay you. For you have made heaven and earth and all the wondrous things under the heaven. You are the Yahweh of all things, and there is no man who can resist you, which are Yahweh. You know all things, and you know, Adonai, that it was that it was neither in contempt nor pride, nor for any desire of glory that I did not bow down to the proud Haman. He's saying, you know my heart. You can see inside what my motivations were, right? I don't have a contemptuous spirit. I'm not looking for everybody to look to me out of pride or glory, right? It wasn't that. For he's like, I could have been content with goodwill for the salvation of Yasharel, to kiss the soles of his feet if necessary, if my people would have been okay. But I did this that I might not prefer the glory of man above the glory of Elohim. Neither will I worship any but you, O Elohim. Neither will I do it in pride. And now, O Yahweh, Elohim and King, spare your people. For their eyes are upon us to bring us to naught. Yea, they desire to destroy the inheritance that has been yours from the beginning. That's a beautiful prayer. Despise not the portion which you have delivered out of Mitzrayim for your own self. He's like calling it to mind. You brought us out of that Exodus. You've saved us before. Hear my prayer and be merciful unto your inheritance. Turn our sorrow into joy that we may live, O Yahweh, and praise your name, and destroy not the mouths of them that praise you, O Yahweh. All Yasharel in like manner cried most earnestly unto Yahweh, because their death was before their eyes. Now, Esther was in fear of her own death, and she sought Yah with everything within her. She greatly humbled herself with sackcloth and ashes and fasting and prayer. And here is her prayer found in chapter 8, verses 3a through 9. O Adonai, you only are our king. Help me, a desolate woman, which have no helper but you, for my danger is in my hand. From my youth up, I have heard in the tribe of my family that you, O Yahweh, took Yasharel from among all people, and our fathers from all their predecessors, for perpetual inheritance, and you have performed whatsoever you promised them. And now we have sinned before you. Therefore have you given us into the hands of our enemies, because we worship their Elohim. O Yahweh, you are righteous. Nevertheless, it satisfies them not that we are in bitter captivity, but they have stricken hands with their idols, that they will abolish the thing that you with your mouth have ordained, and destroy your inheritance, and stop the mouth of them that praise you, and quench the glory of your house and of your altar. Going on with Hadassah 8:10 through 16. And open the mouths of the heathen to set forth the praises of the idols, and to magnify a fleshly king forever. O Yahweh, give not your scepter unto them that be nothing, and let them not laugh at our fall, but turn their device upon themselves, and make him an example that has begun this against us. Now, I may do some word studies on the word device and on the word interloper, because I think I've got some awesome word studies on those that I have not shared yet, but I think they give us a lot of insight. I'm going to try to concentrate on some of that soon. Remember, O Yahweh, make yourself known in time of our affliction, and give me boldness, O King of the nations, and Yahweh of all power. Give me eloquent speech in my mouth before the lion. Turn his heart to hate him that fights against us, that there may be an end of him and of all that are like-minded to him. But deliver us with your hand, and help me that am desolate, which have no other help but you. You know all things, O Yahweh. You know that I hate the glory of the unrighteous, and abhor the bed of the uncircumcised, and of all the heathen. I mean, she's pouring out, I don't like being married to this uncircumcised man. I wouldn't have chosen this for myself, she's saying, you know my necessity. for I abhor the sign of my high estate, which is upon my head in the days wherein I show myself. Like, she's like, I have to wear my crown when I'm ordered to appear and show myself, and that I abhor it as a minstrous rag, and that I wear it not when I am in private by myself. I mean, she's really laying it out there for y'all. You see what others don't see. You see me in my private moments. I mean, I love that. So she was talking about this lion man, right? She called him a lion, this king. It's interesting. And I go over this in chapter 6 when I talk about the animal apocalypse in the book that I wrote, Tribal Roots. It comes from Enoch and all the connections to the Philistines and the hybrid lion men connections to Moab, to the Moabites, to the people of Moab. Okay. Just so you know, there's a link in the description of this so that you can get your own copy. So I did this. I'll leave it here for a minute. I just broke down the Hebrew. I won't geek out on you on all of this because it takes too long. Here it is. If you want to see where I was and all the digging I was doing, I do this a lot in my books. It fascinates me. I love the etymology of words. Basically, I got to the word picture for his name. The strongest leader divides and destroys. The entrance of the door is connected to principalities. These rulers are connected to destruction. And back to Hadassah says, and your handmaid has not eaten at Haman's table, and that I have not greatly esteemed the king's feast, nor drunk the wine of the drink offerings. Neither had your handmaid any joy since the day that I was brought hither to this present, but in you, O Yahweh Elohim of Abraham. O El Elohim, hear the voice of the forlorn, and deliver us out of the hands of the mischievous, and deliver me out of my fear. She was just honest with him about it, right? He commands us over and over, fear not, fear not, fear not. And why? Because we're going to feel fear, but we have the ability to overcome it through him. So on the third day, she laid aside her mourning clothes and put on glorious apparel. She put on a happy face, even though inside she trembled with fear as she stood before the king. He looks at her with fierceness and she faints, right? She's like, I'm dead. But Yah changed his heart and he ended up extending his scepter to her. Yah changed his heart. He was ready to kill her and just take on another. But Yah intervened because he had heard her prayers, and that of Mordecai and that of all the people in all the provinces and all of her handmaids. He heard them, right? She wasn't alone in her prayers, and we aren't either. Sometimes we feel that way, but we're not. There's so many of us scattered everywhere, and we're praying for the same type things, you know? So she then enacts the strategy that she has received in prayer by inviting the king and Haman to dinner 2 nights in a row. Haman is so confident of his position. He's absolutely gloating with pride and what he's accomplishing, right? Until he sees Mordecai and his hatred's roused up again. He just couldn't even wait for the day to arrive. He's like, I'm ready to kill him now. With the encouragement of his wife and friends, they devised that Mordecai should be hung on the gallows now. So he builds this gallows to implant Mordecai upon, right? Disgusting. The night between banquet 1 and banquet 2, the king can't sleep. So he calls for the record books. And he remembers that Mordecai saved his life at one time and realizes he was never honored for this kindness. The next day, he calls in Haman and he asks him, so what should be done for the man that the king wishes to honor? Haman is blinded by his ego. So he believes that the king's referring to him. So he comes up with this elaborate display before all the people of the kingdom, and the king orders him to do that for Mordecai, like leading him around on the horse, dress him in their favorite robe, like, and honor him before everyone. So Haman is greatly humbled in the sight of his self, his family, his friends, and the rest of the kingdom. His family and friends tell him plainly, looks like the tides have turned against him, Haman. The night of the second banquet arrives, and the king asks Esther, what is your petition? I would grant you up to half of my kingdom. We hear that again in the New Testament, right? With King Herod. All right. The power of courage and faith in times of distress. So here's again out of Additions to Esther, chapter 11, verses 3 and 4. Then Esther the queen answered and said, if I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. Then the king, Ashurverosh, answered and said unto Esther the queen, who is he and where is he that dared presume in his heart to do so? And Esther said, the adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman. Then Haman was afraid before the king and queen. And then it continues on in verses 9 and 10. And Harbona, one of the chamberlains, said before the king, behold, also the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman had made for Mordecai, who had spoken good for the king, stands in the house of Haman. Then the king said, hang him thereon. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then the king's wrath was pacified. So Esther requested, he had said, I'm going to give you up to half the kingdom. So she had further requests. She requested that the decree against her people would be reversed. She also requested Haman's 10 sons also be hung on the gallows. All of Haman's property was given to the house of Esther. And in chapter 10, it reveals that Haman was a Macedonian. The etymology of this word describes an ancient people that were very tall. That giant DNA. Here we go again. So the classic Greek historians Herodias, this was from Wikipedia, historians Herodias and Thucydides, I'm probably saying it wrong, reported the legend that the Macedonian kings and the Argead dynasty were descendants of Timunus, king of Argos, and could therefore claim the mythical Hercules as one of their ancestors, as well as a direct lineage from Zeus, chief god of the Greek pantheon. There it is. In chapter 13 of Additions to Esther, it states that Haman intended to translate the kingdom of Persia to the Macedonians. He was just hoodwinking the king anyway. He had an ulterior motive, right? And he was being lauded for his wonderful fidelity. He was an imposter and an interloper. He was there as to hoodwink the king, to kill, steal, and destroy, right? So continuing in chapter 13, for by these means he thought, finding us destitute of friends, to have translated the kingdom of the Persians to the Macedonians. But we find that the Yahudim, whom this wicked wretch has delivered to utter destruction, are no evildoers, but live by a most just Torah. Continuing, therefore, ye shall publish this copy of the Sefer in all places, that the Yahudim may live freely after their own Torah, and ye shall aid them, that even the same day, being the 13th day, the 12th month of Adar, they may be avenged on them, who in the time of their affliction shall set upon them. For El Shaddai has turned to joy unto them the day, wherein the chosen people should have perished. Ye shall therefore among your solemn feasts keep it a high day with all feasting, that both now and hereafter there may be safety to us and the well affected Persians. But to those who but to those which do conspire against us a memorial of destruction. So due to the severe power shift, many people in the Persian Empire converted to become Yahudim. They did this because of this great display of power, and they were afraid of the Yahudim, right? I mean, it usually doesn't stick when you choose your religion out of fear, your devotion by fear. This is why the Baptist message of hellfire and brimstone has not done a lasting work in so many, when that was, my mom, and I'm talking about a lot of old timey, my mom who grew up in the Baptist church, she was sharing with me, and she's in her 80s now. And she was sharing with me, I never really learned about my own personal relationship with Jesus. I was more afraid of God than anything, because every time we went to church, it was, you're going to hell, you're going to hell, you're going to hell, you're going to hell. And she said, and I didn't know how to draw near to a Savior that loved me, And so, I mean, my point is that pressure of just fear usually produces fire insurance, not faith, right? So Hadassah 14, verse 2, the Yahudim gathered themselves together in their cities throughout all the provinces of King Akashverosh to lay hand on such as sought their hurt, and no man could withstand them, for the fear of them fell upon all the people. So chapter 14 gives the historical account of how the feast became known as Purim because of the casting of lots, and why it is celebrated for 3 days, the 13th through 15th of each Adar, and explains why gifts are given to each other in celebration of this time of deliverance. So chapter 15 is a really strange chapter, if you haven't read it yet, but it refers back to chapter 1, in which Mordecai had a dream of a fountain and 2 dragons that preceded the entire incident. The interpretation of the dream is given in chapter 15, 5 through 12, and it says, "For I remember a dream which I saw concerning these matters, and nothing thereof has failed. A little fountain became a river, and there was light, and the sun, and much water. This river is Esther, whom the king married and made queen. And the 2 dragons are I and Haman, and the nations were those that were assembled to destroy the name of the Yahudim. And my nation is this Yasharel, which cried to Elohim and were saved. For Yahuwah has saved his people, and Yahuwah has delivered us from all those evils. And Elohim has wrought signs and great wonders which have not been done among other nations. And these 2 lots came at the hour and time and day of judgment before Elohim among all nations. So Elohim remembered his people and justified his inheritance." And that was it for that presentation. I hope this has been a blessing to you. I know there was a lot in it. I go in on some rabbit trails, but I hope you pick up that Yah highlights what was intended for you, and blessings.
Their journey began in Yasharel, but they were scattered across the face of the earth, each one with its own beat, and each one with its own rhythm. As the dry bones are being revived, the beat begins again at the heart of the tribe.